Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. I have with me here today Miss Ashwini Londhe from Bangalore. She is a child psychologist and has been working with school children for the last more than 30 years. And of course, when there are psychological issues with children, it is almost universal that one also has to look for causes somewhere else. And most often it is the parents, unfortunately. So she has been dealing with the school children and their parents while dealing with the psychological issues with children for the last more than 30 years and in across sort of different types of schools, schools for the elite, schools for the underprivileged. And she's going to share a small little sort of a set of experiences with her today. And the focus today will be on those cases that she has seen where the problem on the surface was different. But then if you go deeper, the problem is discovered somewhere else. And with that mystery for you to speculate on, I'll now hand over to Ashwini ji to tell you what these cases are like.
Yeah. Thank you. Namaste, Bijlani ji. Namaste. As Doctor said, when I'm dealing with students in the school, even now, it has always been seen that superficially the teacher or the parent observes some particular behavior or maybe some signs over the body or somewhere their words are different than what they expect. And the child is referred to us for those superficial symptoms. And when we start investigating or when the intervention starts, we realize or we understand that the reason is far below, it is deep inside where the child needs real help, where the child needs some support. And because the support is missing, the child learns different pattern of behavior where he or she feels comfortable, and it goes on and it ends up with some other psychological problem. So it was a case of an adolescent child who was in class 11, and the teacher saw him hurting himself. She saw a few bruises on the hand and wrist, and she was really scared, and she didn't talk much to the child, and she referred the child to me. And after it is actually with adolescents, it is very difficult to build a rapport, especially when I'm entering into the picture as a counselor or as a psychologist. Usually the child takes 2 steps back. So it was a little difficult, but still, yes, we had a very nice rapport. And then some investigation I did, and I found out that the child, when he was in class 10, he had a traumatic incident where actually one night when he finished with his studies around 12:30 or 1 o'clock midnight, his father came back late. He came back late home, and it was the time to sleep. And because he was awake, the child was awake, the father joined him in the same room and they slept. And the next morning, it was for a shock for the family itself. The father passed away without saying a word. At night, that person passed away. This child, although superficially he accepted the reality, or he was showing that he has accepted it, somewhere deep in his mind, he felt that I am responsible for this. My father slept with me that night, and if I would have been awake at that time, I would have helped my father, and he would have been with us right now. And it would have been a different picture altogether. Actually, when we think about ifs and buts and all these things, it is a kind of irrational a thought what we consider as which is taking the child away from the reality. So somewhere we need to give the real picture to the child that he is not responsible for the father's death. Even if he would have been awake at that time, if the help wouldn't have reached on time, it would have been the same situation. So it is not only his fault, and it was natural that at night we sleep. So he was not supposed to be awake. And definitely his father wouldn't have allowed him to be awake at that long time. So slowly, for a long time, we had to discuss many things what he was actually built up in self. And he started feeling that it is useless. My life is not worth. So uh, it is better to end up this life. So that is where the child has come up just in few months' time, and it was showing on his hands and everywhere. So somewhere the deep rooted cause was different, and what it was showing, it was different. So there we helped the child, and fortunately the mother was very understanding, and she also came up with all the positive framework of mind, like, yes, I want my child back and he shouldn't be doing any such thing. So she also helped positively in this case, and the child is now completing his graduation and actually living a very healthy and happy life. The other thing, what I have seen in my practice, that there are many parents who willingly separate or go away from each other, and somewhere that acceptance of separation or acceptance of being a single parent is not there, and it reflects on the child's behavior. When the mother is alone who's taking care of the child, or when the father is alone taking care of the child, it is seen that the child is burdened with the thoughts that whatever is happening in the father's or in the parent's life or the mother's life, it's just because of that child. The father or the mother, they are living just because, or maybe for the child. Otherwise, it's useless. Like there is nothing to be alive. So it becomes a burden on many children. And one such case came across, like the child used to dress up nicely for the school every morning, and he actually used to walk around the school and not enter the school. So it happened for few days, and one of the parent, who was the parent from the same school, he observed the child and he brought it to the notice of the teacher from the school. And then the child was referred to the counselor that why he is not coming to the school. The parent also came, and it was found out that every time the mother used to say the same thing to the child, that she is doing everything for him. And so he felt like every time I am being a burdened with this, that it is for me, as if the mother is not doing anything in her life for herself. So if I won't be there, then at least she will live a happy life. So this kind of thoughts are built up very easily in the child's mind, especially the adolescent who is actually searching for his own identity. When he is given that particular thought of like he is the burden, or he is not uh, contributing anything to the family or something, so he builds up that thought that I am not worth of anything. So that particular thing, when started working with the child, got to know about all this situation, then the mother was counseled properly, and she was actually taught the way of communication, the positive way of communication and bridging the gap. And always it is been tagged like it is very difficult to communicate with adolescents. It is actually this real situation is like, if you are a real parent and if you want to have that particular relationship with your child of any age, you be the true parent. You open up and accept the child. and everything falls in place. So there is nothing what we have to create which is not real or unnatural. It is just natural acceptance of self, and unconditional acceptance of the child helps the child to feel positive about everything around, positive about the family, and a creative person himself, or the person who can contribute well to the family as well as to the society.
So if one were to look at both these types of cases that Ashwini ji has shared with us based on her experience, uh, the child is carrying a psychological burden. And it's essentially a sense of guilt. In one case, the child feeling responsible for his father's death, and in another case, the child feeling that my mother is living only for my sake. She's not interested in life. Otherwise, she sees no purpose to her life. She's nothing to look forward to except me. So this imposes a heavy responsibility on the child, a psychological burden on the child, and sometimes it is also expressed, sometimes clearly and sometimes indirectly. But the child picks up the signals that because my mother feels that I am sacrificing so much for you, I am doing so much for you, uh, which otherwise I have no reason to do. If life itself is now not worth living for me, therefore my mother's expectations are very high, and am I really coming up to them? So the child feels this psychological burden, and in both cases, the child is manifesting it through different types of symptoms. In one case, by harming himself, uh, not really having still the courage to commit suicide, but at least sort of moving in that direction by harming himself, inflicting pain on himself. So he feels that if I punish myself, in some way I'm compensating for this guilt. And in the other case, the child is not going to school because perhaps he feels that since I'll never be able to come up to the expectations of my mother, who is doing so much for me, then what's the use of going to school? And and therefore he's going to the other extreme instead of at least trying his best. He has given up, and it's also
Yes.
quite possible that the before his parents reached this stage, all the conflict that he saw between his parents also has some influence which is affecting him now, and he's feeling a sort of once again a sort of a not only a psychological burden, probably not just not interested in school, probably he's not interested in life itself. But then it's not so easy to end one's life. So the child can manifest through these different ways, either self-harm or by not going to school. But that's only sort of ultimately what it's pointing to. It is the child is also not finding himself a life worth living, feels in some way responsible for what has happened. In some cases, like the second one, the child may also feel that I am responsible for the conflict between parents because the child is very often brought into the picture while the parents are fighting. And the net result is that the uh, child's life is ruined, and the damage that is done during those few years uh, has a lasting impact, and the child has a long life ahead of him, and therefore it's not really something that should happen. So differences between parents, yes, sometimes they may be inevitable, but then they also have to handle them in a way that it does minimum harm to the child, if at all, and not make the child feel guilty or responsible in any way, that the child has to carry an additional burden just because we have done this for you or we have done that for you. So, uh, this is something which we can easily relate to in today's world, where the differences between couples are also on the increase, and they are being not only the differences were probably always there, but these differences are not being accepted. Instead of an acceptance for the sake of the child and doing it quietly and happily, they are very much on the surface. They lead to a real separation of the parents, leading to single parents, and then the brunt of this whole thing has to be borne by the child. Thank you, Ashwini, for sharing these histories. That should really help many people deal with this issue in a more mature way from a spiritual angle. Because from a spiritual angle, there's no situation which cannot be an opportunity for spiritual growth. And the only thing is that it does not by itself lead to spiritual growth. It's only an opportunity. The opportunity has to be used. And if we are aware of that, one will find that one will be able to use it partly by looking at the partner also, in spite of all our differences, looking at the partner also as a manifestation of the divine, an imperfect manifestation, just as we ourselves are, and therefore develop a more charitable outlook towards the partner, and also feel more responsible that I should not be doing anything which will hurt me within. Because outwardly, there may be a certain pleasure experienced by either poisoning the child against the other parent, or there may be some short term thrill experienced by uh, telling the child how much I am sacrificing for you. But these are all expressions which, on one hand, may give a short thrill, may make us feel that at least I have some outlet available. But then, somewhere deep within, we also know we are not doing the right thing. So, why punish ourselves with that punishment which comes from within, from our soul, while doing these things? Why not do the better thing, have a more charitable outlook towards everyone, including the one who is not likable? You see, one doesn't have to like everybody, but one can love everybody. And to love the one who is unlikable is a challenge. It's an opportunity. So use that opportunity and don't handle it in any way at all, which is likely to harm the child, which will make the child against the other parent, or make the child feel that it is all because of me that they had these differences, and it's all for my sake that this parent who is taking care of me is sacrificing so much. That sort of feelings the child should never have. Thank you.
Thank you.